Next up, I would like to welcome Dr. John Bloom to the stage. Dr. Bloom is the Chief Executive Officer of Podometrics, a care management company with a leading solution to help prevent diabetic foot ulcers, one of the most debilitating and costly complications of diabetes. Podometrics came out of one of our very first hackathons, so we're so happy to be able to welcome you back onto our stage.
I'm a notorious pacer, so I might do one of these numbers. Let's see. That'll get me in trouble here. But hi, how are you? Awesome. How many of you guys have done a hackathon before? Great. How many of you spent time in a VA before? Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to start the way most of you guys are going to start. We'll start with a good problem. And I grew up in a VA in a way. My dad was a service-disabled veteran from Vietnam War, and I used to go with him to all his visits. And I would see all these veterans in wheelchairs missing a leg, maybe missing 2 legs. And I used to always think that that was because of trauma or combat. And it wasn't until medical school ages later that I realized that's largely diabetes. That's a problem when you have poor circulation, you start losing sensation in your feet, you can get these bad wounds in the bottom of your feet, they can get infected, and often they have to get amputated. A single amputation for the literature is over $100,000. A super expensive complication. And in many ways, now fast forward when I'm an anesthesiologist, I would spend whole days in the room doing nothing but freaking amputations. And at least my language back then, it's not pushing a little too far, but in my mind we were still using Civil War medicine for something that shouldn't happen anymore. Why are we still doing this? Why are we still losing limbs to diabetes? Isn't there some way to find them out before they happen and try to, end it off at the pass? The VA spends an estimated around $3 billion in direct costs of foot ulcers. Outside of the VA, it's of course a much bigger problem. We have around 100,000 patients, and as I said, it's a significant driver amputation. And if you get an amputation, right, it takes over your life. You lose your independence. You lose your ability to do many of the things that give you joy in life. And the 5-year mortality in veterans after an amputation is 70%. So it's a killer as well. So we started at Hacking Medicine. It was the very first Hacking Medicine. I don't think they knew what to make of it yet. It's kind of an experiment. This time it was only 100 people in a room. And one of my future co-founders stood up when it was his turn. He said, foot ulcers, they don't make sense. That was a great problem. I sat down at the table, and there were 5 of us that sat down. There was a mechanical engineer, a sensor engineer, a software data scientist, a physician who had done a lot of monitoring work before coming to Sloan, and then an ex-Lehman Brothers banker before Lehman Brothers melted down. And that was our crew. And what came up, just the only photo that lasted of the event. I wish I had more photos of the event. I think I see the word insole on there. We had some pretty bad ideas, at least to start. And then this was the slide that we used at the hackathon to say, here's what we are, Podometrics, this is what we do. And I love this slide because it's pretty terrible, right? It's really bad. We put in here every buzzword you can think of, right? It's got cloud, and it's got a really old iPhone, and it's got Bluetooth and wearables, and then there's a laptop somehow that fits in there, and then my favorite, which is like a Bluetooth headset. I don't know what we're doing. It was a bad idea. What we figured out though, one piece of this was a really good idea, was a feedback loop. Like what if we could find something out early enough to either encourage a good event to occur or prevent a bad one from occurring? That part stuck. We ended up actually winning the hackathon with probably the terrible idea. I think we were good talkers at the time. And really, I guess we'll go through I'll tell you where we are today, and I'll walk you through sort of the history of what we did to take a pretty terrible idea to try to get it into veterans' homes. So what do we do today? We provide veterans a bath mat that goes into their home. We ask them to step on it for 20 seconds a day, and then have them go on with the rest of their life. One of the biggest challenges in this population is adherence, engagement. Right? We provide all these cool pieces of technology, but if they don't use it for long periods of time, they're not getting value from that tech. So that was a real thing that we had to hack, is how do you get this particular patient who's overwhelmed by so much. This is my dad. He's a veteran of diabetes. He's frustrated. His son's a physician and started a company on diabetic foot ulcers, and he's still tough. And how do we get that patient to interact over time? So this idea of a mat, step on it, go on with the rest of your life, that was a big part. Plus, we quickly learned there's a lot of veterans that didn't have access to cell phones, they didn't have access to Wi-Fi. We had to figure out a way that no matter where they were, any veteran in the country, that this thing was going to work. So we invented a cell phone inside the device. That way it broadcasts in a HIPAA-compliant, secure fashion anywhere you go. Like you arrive, you get some sort of Wi-Fi error, we kind of plug at it and fix it up. It's not a big deal. My dad gets a Wi-Fi error. It's like an emotional burden for a moment. He's got to kind of get ready to deal with it. And that's this major point of failure. If he has to have that moment where he's got to address Wi-Fi, that's a dead socket, right? That thing's not going to keep going. That could be the done machine for the rest of its life. So we had to get rid of that. And even with smartphones, if you look at how a lot of the elderly are using smartphones, they may have 1 or 2 apps on them, but they're not necessarily yet really interacting with it. So to have it solely reliant on the smartphone as well, you have to be really clever on how you can use that technology to really make sure that you're going to get good engagement over time. So that was it, right? You step on the device, broadcast to the cloud. We use now analytics to look for signs of a foot ulcer before they happen, and if they do, we have one of our nurses contact the patient and then coach him through the episode to prevent the ulcer from occurring. That's how it works. And then just to give you some brief statistics then, we had a big trial that came out in 2017. We actually started it in the VA. It was a 7-center trial. So it was one VA who ran the whole trial, 3 other VAs were participating in it. And we found that we could detect 97% of foot ulcers 5 weeks before they happen. Now, it took a long time to get the system to do that. Originally we had this pressure-based system. A lot of that first year was figuring out what was the right science to do it. And then in our first foray out of the VA, actually Kaiser Permanente Mid-Atlantic, we've been up for about 2.5 years. In the data that they released about a year ago from the trial, and everyone was a high-risk patient. Everyone had already had a history of a foot ulcer, meaning you have a 40% probability of getting another one in 12 months. And at that time, we had completely eliminated all diabetic foot-related ER visits, all hospitalizations, all major amputations, and all use of hyperbaric oxygen. Basically eliminating almost all resource utilization off the books for this problem, foot ulcers. And we weren't actually preventing every foot ulcer. What was happening is we were preventing probably maybe half of them or so, but the ones we weren't preventing, we were catching them so early that within just 3 weeks as an outpatient, with a little bit of bandages, we can get them back on their own feet, being independent again, to be able to enjoy the things that they need to enjoy for their life. And then lastly, now the VA has been this unbelievable organization for us. We're now 10%, roughly 10% of VAs in the country. We came to it not really knowing how to do it. So it took us a little while to figure out the right way to partner and get sites up and running. But it's been an unbelievable organization to try to come to. If you have a good problem and an interesting piece of technology or a service that can address a big need, it's this biggest single integrated payer in the United States. There's not a much better place to be able to do it. And the veterans need our help. So what was our life like? We came out of this hackathon with a terrible idea, and we didn't know it yet. We hit the literature. We had to figure out, how could we predict foot ulcers? And we realized that there's something about this temperature signal that we could pick up out of the feet. A lot of that first year then was trying to figure out what would it look like. We were all vaporware at this point. And we ended up raising our Series A at just under a year of life with figuring out the feedback loop, what the basic hardware could look like, but we had no real hardware that worked. And then we were able to get a couple pairs to tell some VCs that if we could build it, they would buy it. That was a big piece for us. With that, then we had to get through development. We had to figure out if this mat really was the right idea. We tried a bunch of pieces of technology. The mat really stuck. We had really high engagement rates there. But in the VA population, including that high mortality rate that we unfortunately see, at the end of 1 year, nationwide, 70% of veterans are still fully engaged in the system. So we've had a lot of success keeping people engaged in the program. Once we figured out the device, we got into clinical trials, and of course, like I said, the first site was with the VA. And then finally got our FDA clearance in 2015. Our first sale commercially was in 2016, and our 500 first devices came out in 17. So it's a big part of us. The VA for us is everything. A lot of ways I'm making it for my dad, and it was an exciting path to get here. But that was the thing, from idea into the first veteran home in just over 2 years, 2 years, 1 month. Yeah. And probably the most exciting thing then for us as a team, right? This was our mission. This is what we did this for. I dropped out of practice to do this, and to finally get a chance to see it in homes, preventing amputations, that was everything to us. And it's why we keep, for a while we didn't pay very well. And yet we're all still in the company because of that mission. So just to end then, I'm going to share a few of the lessons that I wish I had heard when I was going through this. Some of them are probably going to be totally self-evident. They'll make total sense. But for some reason, for me, some of them were kind of challenging to really wrap my head around. So the first one is you're going to be finding something to hack on. Start with a big problem. The bigger, the better. And it can feel freaking impossible, and that's wonderful. And then, of course, the key spot is hopefully it resonates with you deeply. If this is really something you're going to want to do, potentially for a long time, years, this is the needle you really want to push, it's got to be something that's going to get out of bed every darn day to say, I can't wait to work more on foot ulcers for my case. You might not find that perfect problem this hackathon, and that's okay. If you have a jamming team, find other problems, right? The team is probably one of the most important parts. You have to find the perfect problem today, but this experience of going through from conception to an idea is going to be an unbelievable experience if you haven't already gone through it. Surround yourself with smart, talented people. So that was a big thing for us. We had such a diverse group, and diversity can help. Right? We had all those different disciplines, and photometrics, this idea of using hardware and a service and data science, like you needed all those crazy people in the room to actually figure out how to do it. So I would say, as you're trying to find out the team, always best to get a nice, non-overlapping set of skill sets when you're there. And it's certainly after the hackathon, as you keep going, really try to keep bringing in those people that are bringing in new backgrounds. This one was probably one of the hardest for me, which is break through the status quo. What I mean by that is, especially for the doctor inside of me, it's so easy for me to say, oh, that won't work. That's not going to happen, right? And I'll have a million probably really good reasons why that can't work. And that's the wrong voice to bring to every one of these events. Just because you want to hear those really crazy ideas, you need to give them a chance. Inevitably, there's going to be someone in the group that's potentially the realist. You're going to have to, like a lot of the realists to have their moment, but you want to get every one of those crazy ideas out as you're really thinking about how to do the solution. And you don't, like for us, we had a crazy idea, it was the wrong crazy idea, we had to figure out a different one later. It doesn't have to be the first time to get it right. And then this one, of course, is, this one took a long time for me to get comfortable with as well, which is getting really uncomfortable with uncertainty. So as a physician, everything has to be randomized control trial, right? If I do that wrong, I can hurt a patient. I need perfect clarity, but of course in a startup, we rarely get that. In fact, I get clarity usually about maybe 2 years after the point that we had to make a decision about it. So you don't ever really get comfortable with uncertainty. You gotta get more comfortable, or at least more comfortable with it. And at least in a hackathon environment, what I mean by that is, you got 36 hours, 48 hours to get something out and running. Make some decisions. You don't know if it's necessarily the right one, but keep jamming, moving to the right. The worst thing that happens is you can readjust and keep moving. But keep going forward. Be okay with not having that perfect idea. It's just important to keep working on a given problem. And then lastly, this one can be written 3 billion different ways, but it really is about mission being first. I find that the best teams can have conflict at them. They have these different viewpoints, and they're going to argue, and that's great. And it's only great if we're all there because we have a singular mission. If you don't have that singular mission, then everything gets kind of chaotic and it kind of breaks down. But when you have a single mission that you're at, and then allows conflict to happen in a great way. And I think that the best, if I look back around my company, the best decisions we made were when we were really at conflict. For example, I see all the opportunities, I don't see many of the risks. I got a partner, he sees all the risks, he doesn't see many of the opportunities. We bang heads all the fucking time, sorry. We bang heads all the time. That's great, that's fantastic. I can push him further, so he's thinking about ideas that maybe they don't make sense, and he keeps me grounded, because I can come up with some pretty crazy ideas most of the time. So when you have that really diverse set, and we're okay with that conflict, then you get the best type of ideas coming out of the team. So I think that's it. You're going to get one of the coolest experiences I know. It literally changed my life. I was a practicing anesthesiologist. I thought I was bitching. Right, I had a cool clinical career. I was either going to hang out with my girlfriend this weekend, or I was going to go to this random event when they said, look, we're hacking medicine, we're going to do it the first time. And unbelievable, I walked out, we built a company out of it. It's absolutely taken over my life, and I cannot imagine doing anything else for the rest of my life. This is exactly what I want to be doing. So definitely get outside your comfort zone, talk to a billion people, especially if you don't like to talk to people, talk to a ton of people. Try to get good ideas, bounce around, and the more uncomfortable spots you can put yourselves in, the better you're going to get out of this experience. And I'm thrilled to see what kind of companies come out tonight. So strong work. Glad you guys are all here, and I can't wait to watch from the sidelines to see where you guys go. Thanks.